Hello YouTube, how are you doing? Welcome back if you are returning. Welcome to my channel if you are new, and thank you for being here. I'm not doing a list today. I actually have a few lists that I am compiling that I'm really excited about, but today I am doing this video because this is a question that I've gotten multiple times on social media and just from people that I talk to about books. And that is how I rate books. The way people rate books is different for a lot of readers. And I just wanted to be clear about that because especially as an author, I take ratings into consideration a lot more than I feel like average people because my books are being rated. And so it's good for me to go to other reading accounts and see how they rate books because as an author, if you get a 4-star review or a 3-star review, it can be a little bit devastating because it's not a 5-star, but it doesn't always mean that a book is a bad book. So we're gonna start with the easy one, which is 5 stars. For me to rate a book 5 stars, it has to be something spectacular. I actually don't rate a lot of books 5 stars. And the reason behind that is because what 5 stars means to me is that that book was amazing. Like, it's a book that I might read again. It's a book that I will recommend to people. It's a book that I think about even when I'm not reading it. It's that feeling where you close a book and you are still thinking about it and you just want to tell people about it. It takes a lot for a book to do that to me, to like elicit that sort of emotional response. I'm kind of difficult to please when it comes to books. Or I wouldn't say difficult to please. I'm difficult to please in the 5-star range, I guess, because I actually love a lot of books. A lot of books that are rated very poorly, I actually really love. And but it does take a lot for me to rate it 5 stars. So a 5-star read would be something that the characters just scream to me. The emotions in the book just scream to me. The plot of the book was really, really well done. The creativity, everything. It's all gotta be there. It's gotta be, something that sticks with me even after I stop reading the book. So I guess it's like an extra simplified word for it. It's never ever anything like a particular trait of a book that is going to make it 5 stars. It's more how it made me feel afterwards. If it made me not be able to put it down and it's something that I'm going to be talking about well after I've stopped reading it, that's usually how 5 stars go. So when we're talking about 4 stars, those are also books that I really, really, really enjoyed. And I will always recommend those books to my friends or other readers. And I consider 4 stars a good rating as a reader. If I'm not as an author, if I get a 4-star rating, I wish it was a 5-star. But as a reader, 4 stars is still a really good book. And the only reason usually that holds me back from making something a 5-star versus a 4-star is if there was anything in the book that kind of made me cringe, anything in the book that I thought was a little bit underdeveloped. I am very lenient about grammatical errors in books because being an indie author myself, I understand that self-editing is something that a lot of indie authors do, not because they want to, but because the cost of editing is very, very high. And a lot of indie authors don't have that because it's all coming out of our own pocket. And I am going to make another video very, very soon comparing self-publishing and traditional publishing, if you guys are interested in that. If any of you are aspiring writers or just want information, that will be in a video coming up. But anyways, I'm very lenient with grammatical errors. So I can catch a few throughout a book and it won't really affect the stars or the ratings that I give that book. If it is if there are too many, I think there's only been one book, and it is a book that I actually mentioned on this channel that I recommended, and I loved the book. I absolutely loved the book. And it would have been a 5-star, absolutely. But there was just so many grammatical errors in the book that I could not give it that extra star. So if there are too many grammatical errors, it can bring a star down for me personally because it's very, very distracting. Misspellings, periods, capitalizations, things like that are kind of, smaller, I can usually handle. But if it is something like this particular book, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to be that kind of channel, but this particular book left words out of sentences. continuously. And I mean dozens and dozens and dozens of times there were words left out of sentences that completely stopped my ability to focus on the book, and I had to kind of decipher what the sentence or the word was supposed to be. And so that took a star off of that book particularly. So those are things that's one thing that can bring a rating down from 5 stars to 4 stars, even if the book is really, really, really good. But otherwise, if I'm rating something 4 stars, it usually just means that it was a really good book and I will recommend it, but it's probably not something that I'm going to be dreaming about. It's not something I'm going to be gushing about. It's not something I'm going to be running to my fiance, who doesn't read as much as I do, to tell him about this book that he's probably not going to care about, you know? So 4 stars is still really good. Really, really, really good. But 5 stars is just something that hit me in the face with like passion and that sort of thing. So 3 stars most of the time is still a pretty good rating, in my opinion, as a reader. I hate getting anything under 4 stars as an author, but as a reader, when I rate something 3 stars, it was a mediocre book. It was a book that for me personally, I don't regret reading, but I also can't say anything stood out to me about the characters. Nothing about the story really stood out to me. Maybe there were more grammatical errors than I was able to handle. Formatting is another thing that I don't usually take into account very strongly when it comes to my reviews on things, but if it is something grammatical or formatting that is so extreme that almost makes it unreadable, that can bring stars way down. But 3 stars is a book that I don't regret reading, but I also don't think it was a great book. Like, if that makes any sense. It's a book that was an experience, but it's not something that I'm going to be putting on my list of the greatest books that I read of this year or anything like that. It's not something that I'm really going to remember after the fact. It's just very mediocre. That's the word that comes to mind really when I think about my 3-star ratings, is just mediocre book. Didn't have any standout traits or anything like that. Wasn't a bad book. It just was. 2 stars is where I get really dicey with my opinion on books. It is a book that I cannot bring myself to give a 1 star because, I'm about to discuss what makes a book a 1 star for me. But when it comes to 2 stars, 2 stars is a book that I didn't like. And there's a lot of things that can make me not like a book. Shallow characters that don't make any sense to me. Because I am a huge romance reader, if I can't figure out the reason why 2 characters are in love or have an attraction to each other, that becomes a 2 star because I just don't have any interest in reading about their relationship. If the story was too underdeveloped, if the plot was too underdeveloped, if I didn't find myself liking any of the characters or vibing with any of the characters, or if I couldn't figure out justifications for those characters, those are things that I consider poorly written, or things that make a book poorly written. And those are books that I usually, I don't want to be cruel, but I will usually, if it comes up in a conversation, I will say that it wasn't a good book. That being said, 2 stars are still books that I was able to finish. So I've said this before on my channel, but when it comes to how I rate books, I don't typically rate books that I DNF. So if I DNF a book, I won't usually give it a rating because I don't feel like I didn't finish it. I shouldn't give a rating on a book that I never finished. However, if I DNF a book for a reason that is just so extreme, I will rate that book and I will tell people why I DNF'd it. And there are a lot of books that I don't actually review for certain reasons. I just will give a rating, but I won't actually review them. But anyways, when it comes to, like I'm saying, 2 stars is books that I finish. So I have finished it, and I am able to make a very, I don't know what it would be called. I have a valid opinion about it because I read it and I finished it. And sometimes the 2 stars also come from the fact that I did finish the book and the ending completely threw me. And it just made me feel like I wasted my time reading a book. So that can also be a 2 star. So 2 star, in my opinion, is not good. It's not good to me as a reader. It's just not good. And as you may have guessed, a 1 star rating is definitely not good. So books that I have rated 1 stars are books that have personally offended me in some way. And I don't mean like, you know, like I don't mean that in the traditional sense, like a book actually offended me. It's more it offended me because it baited me. And then I read it and I felt betrayed. So books like that are so I don't really have a whole lot of limits on my triggers. So I know that there are a lot of readers out there that if there are trigger warnings, they pay very close attention to those. I don't usually pay, I mean, I do pay attention to them, but triggers don't usually deter me from reading a book. I don't really have things that trigger me in that way, but there are things that trigger me just in the sense of being a reader and knowing good content versus bad content. So things that trigger me would be putting something in a book that doesn't need to be in the book, but you can kind of tell that the author put it in the book to be shocking, but it has no place in the plot, if that makes any sense. And I think being a writer has kind of made me like look for things like that, unconsciously look for things like that. And I have read quite a few books that people just wanted to be shocking and wanted to write shocking content, but there was no plot and no character development surrounding that shocking content. And that's just one example of a book or a story that would make me rate it 1 star is like, not developing a plot. I've also rated books 1 star if they're just really poorly written. And I know that sounds like really mean, but as a reader, I want to read something I want to be immersed in what I'm reading. And if I'm just not immersed and I feel like I'm reading something that is from a 5-year-old who hasn't finished school and can barely spell, then I actually get kind of triggered. And I know I just said that, like, indie authors and self-published authors all self-edit as well. Not all of us, but a lot of us self-edit. So I try to be a little bit more lenient. But there are limits to my leniency. And I'm very supportive of indie authors. That's what 90% of my channel, I wanted to be about indie authors and indie books. So I'm very supportive of that. But there's also editing software out there, and not all of it costs money. And I just feel like when I read something that is that has that many errors, then I just know that the writer didn't even want to take the time to get like simple editing software, and that just makes me think that writers are lazy and don't care about their work. And if they don't care about their work, then I don't care about the work. Anyways, that's one of the biggest things when it comes to reading indie works. That's one of the big things that will make me downgrade my rating. And the other more obvious ones are just the fact that if I don't see a developed plot, or if I don't see relatable characters, anything like that, like I said, if I just cannot, and I just think that the content is just not there for me, I will rate it 1 stars, and I will very openly rate it 1 star. I have actually rated a few DNF'd books 1 star, and that is when they make me very angry. And I have read a few books that just make me so angry because I just hated the characters, and not hate as in like these are the villains, you're supposed to hate them. Hated them as in they were just hateable characters that I could not read about. I don't care. If it's a character that I don't like, I don't care what happens to them, and I will not finish that book. And if I get to the point where I read a book enough to not like it, like if I'm that passionate about like not liking the character or the plot or something, I will say that. And I will very openly say that I DNF'd the book, that I did not finish the book, and this is why I rated it. Usually though, like I said, I don't rate books that I DNF unless I feel very passionate about the reason I DNF. I guess that brings me to my last little discussion, and that is why I DNF books. I don't always DNF a book because I don't like it. There are times where I will stop reading a book because it didn't grab me in the first 20 pages, and I'm just in enough of a reading slump to not want to go through you know, the process of fighting my reading slump to get through those 20 pages. If it just doesn't grab me enough and I'm just kind of falling asleep, then I'll put that book down. And that doesn't mean I won't pick it up again later. It's just that it's not vibing with me right now. I'm very much a mood reader, so I will go through times when I am reading only dark romance or fantasy romance, or I have gone through huge, you know, phases of only reading alien romance and things like that. And then I'll pick up a book and I'll read the synopsis and I'll really want to read that. And it's a completely different book or genre than all the other ones that I was reading. So I am a mood reader, which is why I don't make lists of books. I don't have TBRs anymore. At least, like, I don't have monthly TBRs. I have a huge list of like hundreds of books that I want to read, but I will never limit myself by making a smaller list to say like, I have to read these books in this month, because I will never do that. I cannot bring myself to read a book that I am not in the mood to read. So for me to DNF a book, it does, like I said, it can just be a book that's I'm not vibing with in the moment. And then, like I said, other times it could be a book that I just absolutely hate, and I cannot for the life of me get through it. And in that case, I will usually discuss with friends why I hated the book. Unfortunately, maybe if I grow on this channel, then I might start, you know, talking about books that I really, really didn't like, because I actually enjoy those conversations on other channels. I don't know why. Just not right now, because again, if you haven't heard me say this a million times on my channel, I am an indie author myself. And I, as an indie author, wouldn't want to see another indie author talking badly about my book. And that's just something that I took into that's a rule that I set for myself when I made this channel, is to not talk about books that I hated. I will rate them under my alias, but I won't really talk about them for that reason. And yeah, I might bend at some point in the future, but I just don't want to be openly cruel about my opinions on some books. I just don't think it needs to be said, to be honest. So most of my content here is going to be books that I enjoy. I have a lot of like lists that I'm compiling, and one of those lists that I am almost finished with, and I actually will have a video after January for the books that I read in January, because I actually am back on track with reading books. For a little bit there, I was in a reading slump, and I have recently got out of my reading slump and I'm reading books again. The next list that I really, really want to hit on, that I am working on very hard, is Dragon Shifters, like Dragon Shifter romance books. And I do have a series of Dragon Shifter romance books here. I mean, it's not actually right here, it's on Amazon, but I am adding to that series very soon. I know it's been a really, really long time, and I've been being scolded by people who've actually read the series, because I haven't put the next book out in a long time, and it's taking me much longer than I thought it was gonna take me. I've just been working on so many other things that it's kind of been on the back burner, but 2024 is the year where that book is being released. So if you want to read sexy Dragon Shifters, there it is. But the list that I am compiling is not going to include mine. Well, I mean, it might at the end, just because I wrote them and I want people to know about them. But anyways, but until then, I hope you guys are all having a great week. Thank you for being patient. I know I said I was going to be putting out videos once a week, but life has just been crazy. In 2024, I've decided that I'm going to be very, very busy, and I'm going to make things happen. So I have had a ton of projects, and I have a lot of projects coming up, and I have some really cool news that I want to share with you guys, but I will save that for next time. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Hit the bell, it really helps me out. Comment on this video about books that you like or books that you recommend, how you rate books if it's any different from mine. I will see you all later. Bye!